Time for another board game review, and this time we have the game Cryptid Urban Legends. This was sent to me by Osprey Games, and is designed by Ruth Vevers and Hal Duncan. In Cryptid Urban Legends, one of you plays the cryptid, moving from city block to city block as you attempt to avoid detection and make your escape. The other will take on the role of the scientist, using high-tech sensors in a bid to track down the cryptid and make the discovery of a lifetime. Let me show you how to play. So, in Cryptid, it's a one-on-one game. When I use the cryptid is trying to win by having your presence counters, that's these, on the leftmost and rightmost city blocks simultaneously when there are 7 blocks in play. These are city blocks. That means you can't win the first 2 turns of the game. As the scientist, you win by reducing the cryptid down to 1 or 0 presence counters on the board. You can win on turn 1. If the deck of city blocks runs out, whoever has collected the most evidence counters, which are these pink discs we'll get into later, is the winner. So, there are 5 phases: the censor phase, hiding phase, victory phase, restrict phase, and expand phase. You keep playing through these phases until the end of the game is triggered during the victory phase. So, in the censor phase, the row of city blocks that has sensors in it, in this case, this row right here, is the active row for this round, and the one with no sensors is the inactive row. These sensors are never placed on the blocks. They are placed in spaces, which are areas between 2 blocks or to the left or right. Now, each player draws 3 cards, and the cryptid starts. On your turn, you can take one of the following actions. You can play a movement card, or use your wild card, only if it's face up. They both start face down. Or draw 2 movement cards from your deck. Let's go through the movement cards. One movement card you can play is Split. Split, you select a space in the active row, move all the sensors into that space in diagonally adjacent spaces in the inactive row. You can move them in any combination, but you must move at least 1 sensor into each diagonally adjacent space if possible. I could take this row or this space. I could go, I'm gonna put these 2 here, and this one here. Something like that. That would be a split. If you play a shuffle card, you select 1 sensor in the active row and move it 1 space left or right, then move it into the diagonally adjacent space, moving in the same direction in the inactive row. So if I picked this white sensor, I could go boop, boop, and it would go down there. It also shows you on the cards kind of like how they move. Another movement you could play is Align. Align, you choose 1 sensor color and move all the sensors of that color into diagonally adjacent spaces in the inactive row in the same direction. Let's pretend I had a pink sensor up here. I could go, okay, I'm gonna move pink, and I'm gonna move them this way. So I move this one down here and move these down here. Your wild card, if it is face up, you can use it to do any one of the 3 actions, and then you flip it back face down. This flips up whenever your opponent gains an evidence counter. We'll get into that later. And instead of playing a card, if you need cards, you can draw 2 cards from your deck. Your hand limit is 4, though. Now, you keep taking turns, either playing cards or whatever, until all the sensors in this row are gone. So let's say somebody did a split, and all the sensors are now gone. Now it's time for the hiding phase. The cryptid will announce a feature. For each city block in the inactive row, check if it matches the announced feature and is diagonally adjacent to a presence counter in the active row. Let's go over what features are. A feature is either a number of sensors or a combination of colors. When you announce a number of sensors, only city blocks with that exact number of sensors in the 2 adjacent spaces match. So this city block has 3 here and 4 here. This is a number of 7. This one is also 7. If you announce a combination of colors, only city blocks with that exact combination of colors match the feature. So you could say, you can pick 1, 2, or 3 colors. If I said black, white, pink, actually both of these are, because they both have black, white, and pink on either side. Let's say I switch these up and it looked like this. In this case then, this one would be, you could say white, pink. This one's white, pink. This one's black, white, pink. Like that. So in this situation, the cryptid could go, I'm gonna say 5. That's my feature. This one has 5 cubes. This token goes down here. Or actually, it doesn't go down there. You put a token on it. Then, It's the victory phase. Check to see if the cryptid has escaped or been captured. This is the only phase where the game can end. In this case, there are not 7 city blocks yet, and there are not, obviously presence counters on both the leftmost and rightmost city blocks. So the cryptid does not win. There are not 1 or fewer presence counters on city blocks, so the scientist does not win. Oh, I'm sorry. Before this, you would remove this from the active row. Or if we go through this entire deck, then we see who has the most evidence counters, which we're about to go into. There is a restrict phase. You skip this phase if there are fewer than 7 city blocks, but let's put some extra city blocks on just so I can show you what this phase looks like. In the restrict phase, the scientist removes either the leftmost or the rightmost city blocks. They would then take them and discard them. If there were any evidence counters on them, the scientist would claim them. And in that case, the cryptid would then flip over their wild card. However, the scientist cannot take any blocks that have a presence counter on them. So if there was a presence counter here, the scientist would have to take these instead. If there's ever a situation where there are sensors here and you take away this, the cryptid moves these sensors to any other space in the inactive row. So that's how the scientist can get the evidence counters, while in the hiding phase, that's when the cryptid can get them. After that restrict phase, which only happens, I think, after the first 2 turns, then the player closest to the active row, which has no sensors, will draw the top 2 cards from the deck. They then place them 1 on the leftmost end and 1 on the rightmost end. Then they can choose. Anything with that pink symbol gets an evidence counter. So now that's definitely going to be a space that is highly contested, because if anyone claims that, they are 1 point closer to victory. And that's pretty much it. You would go back to the beginning, take turns playing cards, moving these sensors into the inactive row. Then the cryptid picks a feature, moves these tokens down, claims any pink tokens they can get. And then you see if either victory condition has happened. If there are 7 city blocks in play and the cryptid has presence counters on both the left and rightmost city blocks, like that, the cryptid automatically wins. If there are 1 or 0 presence counters in play, like this, the scientist wins. Or, like I mentioned, if we run out of cards in here, then you see who has more of these. And remember, to get these, the cryptid can get them by claiming them with features. So in the hiding phase, if they had they said pink and moved it here, they could get it like that. Or in the restrict phase, the scientist, if the cryptid doesn't have any markers here, the scientist could take these blocks and get the evidence counters that way. And that's the game. So I've played the original Cryptid, which is a very different game. And I thought that one was a really interesting deduction game. This, in comparison, feels very dry and kind of blah. The cover, the art, it makes you think this is going to be a really intense, cool, kind of cat and mouse sneaking game one-on-one. But instead, it's just kind of this very, for me anyway, dry game of just make sure certain things don't happen. Okay, don't let the circle go to this card, or they get the pink circle. Okay, all you're really doing in this game is shifting the cubes around with the cards, so that blocks have certain features. The wild cards can kind of help mitigate, but sometimes you just get a bad draw, and since you have to use an action to draw more cards, it can be frustrating. It can also be pretty annoying keeping track of which features are in which block at a glance. There's a lot of stopping, okay, wait, this is white, pink. Oh no, there's a black one. Okay, it's white, pink, black. It's not, okay, this one's, and it has 4 cubes here, 3 cubes here. There's a lot of stopping to count blocks. It doesn't have a lot of clarity at first glance, so there's a lot of, it's just a little tedious. Overall, it's not a bad game, but I found it pretty underwhelming. A little too messy to be a super elegant, clean, abstract game. It's clearly trying to pretend it's thematic, but it isn't. So it's much closer to one of those very abstract ones, but it still has some annoyances in its play that I felt were just kind of tedious, I guess. I was pretty lukewarm on this one. If you're looking for a game that is actually pretty interesting, that's not like this at all, the original Cryptid is worth giving a shot.